Phil had worked as much as he could over the past few years trying to give himself therapy and relaxation by improving his old ambulance, shaping her slowly into his retreat and adventure rig. Then, she was savagely torn down by a needless electrical fire. Once the smoke and paperwork had cleared, Phil was able to move on to search for his next old ambulance to make his own. Phil found her in Edmonton, Alberta, some 4,000 kilometers away and at the top of his budget. But she is in pure, prime condition, and Phil couldn't let this one get away. Phil traveled to Edmonton on a one-way flight, checked her inside and out over 2 days then, was ready to do the final purchase. But getting his insurance money was going to be quite tough. On the day the check was to clear a 5-day hold, the bank had decided on a different plan. Phil had a full morning of high-level crap, dealing with the bank on keeping a hold on the insurance deposit. Then, after noontime, Phil had to walk 3 blocks carrying all of his luggage and electronics. He walked in pain to a grocery store to get bananas, V8 juice, and rice cakes for his night in the ambulance. Earlier, Phil had asked if he could sleep in the ambulance, since it would save him hundreds of dollars on a hotel. This whole adventure is terrifying since Phil really doesn't know how easily his finances will stretch. Bob, the manager at the sales yard where the ambulance is located, called and asked Phil for his arrival time to return to the shop, so the guys could close down and lock up. With Phil inside the yard, ready for a night in the ambulance, Phil arrived by Uber to the yard, dragging himself inside with the luggage. Bob says there is an important letter that Phil needed to see. Oh no. Phil was thinking the boss had sold the ambulance ahead of him to someone else, and all his hopes and effort are going to be lost. Bob handed Phil a 2-page document, but Phil is reading through it with surprise and joy. Bob had taken his own saved travel points and reserved a night at the Hyatt Place Edmonton West Hotel, executive floor. That's floor 6, by the way. Bob told Phil that he had stressed enough and deserved a break, a chance to ease off and breathe. Phil couldn't give enough thanks and praise for this gesture, being his last night in Edmonton. This man, Bob, is just so true and real with his kindness. He relates easily to people. Phil felt this gentle assurance even before his travel, during their phone calls, and Phil was so deeply in luck to have connected to such a person as Bob. There are several amazing connections Phil has made over his 62 years, and they know who they are, because Phil makes efforts to tell them, and now Phil will add another. Thank you, Bob.